Hello everyone, welcome back to Talking History. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all keeping well. My name's Liz and on this channel, you know exactly what I do by now. So for the last few weeks I have covered the illegitimate children of Henry I, and through all of that we have remained within the Norman period. And so for this week I want to go back to doing the kings and queens of the Norman period. I still have one video left for the illegitimate children of Henry I, but I'm going to do that in the next couple of weeks' time because that will slot in quite nicely. So this week is going to be all about King Stephen of Blois. Blois. I still don't know how to pronounce that name. I want to say Blois because that's how it's spelled, but I know that's wrong. So, sorry. I will try. I just can't pronounce his name. It's a really awkward name to pronounce. I don't like it. I'm not very good at pronouncing things like that. But anyway. So, if you're interested in learning more about King Stephen, then please do stay tuned. Stephen of Blois would be the last of the Norman kings. He was grandson to William the Conqueror and nephew to Henry I. And Stephen would be at the centre of a 19-year civil war that would become known to history as the Anarchy. Now, Stephen's successor would be Henry II, the first of the Plantagenets that would go on to rule England for a further 300 years. So Stephen was born around 1097. There wasn't an exact date of birth given, and he was born in Blois in France. Now, Stephen was born to Stephen Henry, Count of Blois, and Adela of Normandy. Now, Adela, she was the daughter of William the Conqueror and sister to Henry I. And Stephen's father had died during the First Crusade. So at a young age of around 10, Stephen was sent to live at his uncle's court in England. So once Stephen arrived, he quickly established himself as one of Henry's favourites, and he received lands and riches. In 1120, Stephen had a very lucky escape. He was to go aboard the White Ship, but he had a bad bout of diarrhea, so he had to get off. And he left his cousin, who was Henry's only legitimate son and heir, on board. Now, unfortunately, the White Ship sank, and Henry's only legitimate son and heir, William, went down with the ship. Only one person out of the whole disaster survived. I have done a video on the White Ship. I will leave that linked up there or somewhere for you to find it in case you haven't seen it yet. Now, if William had survived, then Stephen would almost certainly have never have been king. So sometime after 1120, but before 1125, which is really annoying because there's not a date given, Stephen married Matilda of Boulogne. Now, Matilda was the daughter of Eustace, the Count of Boulogne, and Mary of Scotland. Mary was the daughter of Malcolm III of Scotland and Margaret of Wessex. And Mary was sister to Henry's wife Matilda. So Matilda of Boulogne, there is a lot of Matildas in this. Matilda was a very popular name during the 12th century. So Matilda of Boulogne would become a formidable ally to her husband Stephen's fight to keep the crown. Now, it was said that Stephen was good looking and he was pious and he was chivalrous and charming to everyone, even poor people. And all of those qualities would be needed for the next coming years. King Henry I died in 1135, and despite 2 marriages and having at least 22 children, Henry had left no legitimate male heirs as William died on the White Ship. So Henry nominated his only legitimate daughter, Empress Matilda, as his successor, although Henry never officially named her as his heir. So Henry had his barons swear their loyalty and allegiance to Matilda, and one of those barons included Stephen. After Henry's death, many barons didn't follow Henry's wishes as they didn't like the idea of a female ruler or having a member of the House of Anjou as their sovereign, and Matilda, who married Count Geoffrey of Anjou in 1128. Also, Matilda wasn't actually in England at the time of Henry's death. So Stephen, he quickly made his way to England and had the barons support him. And it wasn't as if Stephen was exactly a nobody. He was of royal blood. He was William the Conqueror's grandson. Yes, grandson. And nephew to Henry I. And Stephen was also one of the richest nobles in England, and above all, the most important to all of those barons, Stephen was male. Stephen was also a good military leader, and he was in control of the royal treasury in Winchester thanks to his brother Henry, who was Bishop of Winchester since 1129. Now, Stephen quickly gathered all the support from the barons to be elected king on the 22nd of December 1135. He was crowned 4 days later on the 26th of December in Westminster Abbey. However, things were not going to go smoothly for Stephen or his kingdom. Stephen had a lot of support, but Matilda was also supported by another group of powerful barons for her claim to the throne, and soon enough, civil war broke out. Empress Matilda's husband, Count Geoffrey, was just as ambitious to control England as Matilda. Now, Matilda's most important ally was her illegitimate half-brother, Robert Fitzroy, Earl of Gloucester. Now, Robert had initially supported Stephen, but he switched to Matilda's side, and Stephen had crushed an uprising in April 1138 of Robert's followers, but the truth was Stephen's opponents were mounting up. Even his own brother Henry, Bishop of Winchester, had fallen out with him over who should control Canterbury, and he switched sides to Matilda. Another enemy was Ranulph, Earl of Chester, he was so upset with Stephen. Well, he wasn't upset, he was pissed at Stephen for giving away his castle at Carlisle to King David of Scotland. Now, Stephen was busy trying to buy loyalty by giving out royal lands, but his predecessor Henry I had overused that strategy, and he left the crown somewhat impoverished, and the barons were now having the leverage to promote their own situations. Some were taking full advantage of the weakness within the monarchy, and they were switching sides. Now, it's quite understandable that by this point, King Stephen may have turned a bit paranoid, and it may explain his actions of having Bishop Roger, Bishop of Salisbury, arrested along with a further two bishops, believing that they were guilty of a treasonous plot in 1139. But Stephen's situation had brightened a little when Empress Matilda arrived in England from France, but was then captured in 1139. Matilda was imprisoned at Arundel Castle in West Sussex, but she was then released, where she established a rival court of her own in southwest England. Now, in East Anglia, a rebellion had bolstered Matilda's cause when the Bishop of Ely was imprisoned, and the Earl of Chester took that moment to take Lincoln. My tummy's gurgling. It's almost lunchtime. Sorry. So King Stephen had responded by sending an army, but the Battle of Lincoln was lost. And on the 2nd of February, 1141, making things so much worse for Stephen, he was arrested by Robert of Gloucester in April 1141, and he was imprisoned first at Gloucester and then at Bristol for the next 9 months. This was Stephen's lowest point in his reign, and for a while it looked like it was the end of his reign. Now, Empress Matilda, she had herself elected as queen at Winchester on the 8th of April 1141. Matilda had then travelled to London in June 1141 to get herself ready for her coronation. But Matilda's rule, it was seen as too self-interested, and her rise in taxes had upset a lot of people, so much so Matilda was driven out of the city, and then Matilda was dealt another blow when Queen Matilda, Stephen's wife, had formed an army from Flanders and captured Robert of Gloucester. Empress Matilda was obliged to release Stephen in exchange for her brother Robert. So on the 1st of November 1141, Stephen was then reinstated as king, and later in November, Stephen even received a second coronation on the 25th of December 1141, this time at Canterbury Cathedral. But the civil war was far from over. A few barons had taken full advantage of the chaos that the anarchy had caused, and they seized new lands. They had new castles built. The castles was the ultimate medieval symbol of authority. Some even had their own coinage minted without any royal consent, which was another blow to the monarchy. Now, peasants, they were getting all caught up in the battles, and many were seized, even the burning of entire villages. There were lawless barons imprisoning and torturing these peasants without any respect for the law. Even the clergy was getting involved. They thought the churches and the abbeys were the highest level of security in certain parts of the kingdom, and it fell to its lowest. By the end of 1142, things were beginning to turn in December. Matilda was besieged at Oxford, and she only managed to escape the castle by going out in a snowstorm wrapped in a white cloak. Empress Matilda fled to a new base at the Castle of Devizes in Wiltshire. And next was the biggest blow of all for Matilda. Her beloved and most loyal half-brother Robert, 1st Earl of Gloucester, died in Bristol 1147, and he had been a crucial part of many rebel barons. So after 6 long years of being shut up in an almost impregnable castle at Devizes, Matilda returned to Normandy to focus on her son Henry, who had inherited his father's lands in Normandy. And in 1151, Henry was also very ambitious, and he had his sights on a lot more than just France. England had been weakened by many years of civil war. As for King Stephen, the country had been ripped apart by the divided barons, and he was also threatened by his neighbours' actions. Geoffrey of Anjou, who was Matilda's husband, had invaded Normandy in 1137. Now, despite King Stephen's expedition there and local barons were less than willing to fight yet another war over the contested territory, Stephen withdrew and just let Normandy fend for itself. Over in Scotland, Empress Matilda's uncle, King David I, was also getting involved. He attacked Northumbria, Lancashire and Yorkshire in 1138. The Scottish king would eventually take control of Cumberland, Northumberland, Durham, Westmoreland and Lancaster. But he was pushed back by Stephen's army near Northallerton, I think that's how you pronounce it, in Yorkshire at the Battle of Standard in August 1138. Now in Wales, brothers Cadal ap Gruffydd and Merdad, I think, won victories against the English armies, allowing them to significantly extend their territories into Western Wales. Now, the lack of a strong monarch was costing England greatly. Now, for Stephen, the biggest and deepest blow of all came in 1153 when his beloved wife, Queen Matilda, died. And shortly after, his son and heir, Eustace, also died that same year. Lastly, Stephen faced a third and final invasion of Henry of Anjou, who was hoping for a battle, but on the event, neither sides, their soldiers or leaders were keen to fight. So on the 6th of November, Stephen signed the Treaty of Wallingford with Henry, which saw Henry as Stephen's official heir. In return, Stephen was allowed to keep his crown until his death. And it was clear that civil war hadn't done anyone any good, and another battle for the throne was the last thing England needed. Henry had the support of the barons, as one anonymous medieval chronicler wrote, "For 19 long winters, God and his angels slept. Now was the time for unity and peace." King Stephen died on the 25th of October 1154, aged 57. Stephen died in Dover, Kent, and King Stephen was buried at Faversham Abbey in Kent alongside his wife and son. Henry was crowned King Henry II of England on the 19th of December 1154. Henry became the first undisputed King of England for over a century, and with him began the new ruling dynasty, the Plantagenets. And there we are. There's Stephen's story. I'm not quite done with this era, so don't worry. Don't worry. There's still more to come. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I made it all the way to the end without getting myself tongue-tied, so you don't miss any future videos. I have so many planned. I can't wait. And I love the Plantagenets. I absolutely love it. But we are leading ever closer to my absolute favourite era, the Tudors. I love the Tudors. Love it. Anyway, I'm not at all excited. I'm very calm. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and all that good stuff, because you are all amazing. And please continue being amazing. You are. And like I said, thank you for watching. Please join me next time for another video where I just talk history. There we are. Look after yourselves. Be good. Bye.